everybody. We're back. This is another episode of Talking TI with Mo and Chris. Today we're actually going to explore a little different topic. Still TI. Don't worry. But we, due to some of the shifting realities that we're living through right now, Mo and I did have a little trouble getting a full game together. And we kicked around a few ideas of what to do for the podcast. And we kind of settled on a 2-player game. And Twilight Imperium is obviously not built for 2 players, but we did a little digging online and we found a princess.
It's called the Princess Variant.
Yes.
This is version 1.4. And this is a way to play TI with 2 players. Not ideal. I mean, it's kind of what we have to work with, and it's unfortunate because we've been aching to play an actual, game with other people. But as Chris mentioned, the reality of the situation is that we just have not been able to get a group together, and our regularly scheduled group has decided that the current state of COVID does not warrant getting a bunch of people together in a room. So it's unfortunate, but this is our way of sort of trying to say, okay, will a 2-player version of Twilight Imperium actually be fun to play?
Yes.
So we printed the Princess Variant rules here, and we're going to go ahead and sort of let's talk about it, Chris. Based on what you've read about this Princess Variant, what are you expecting? Are you expecting it to be fun? Do you think we're going to have fun here with this? What's going on here?
I'm mixed. I know we went back and forth, and I kept saying, well, at first I was the big proponent of doing a 2-player game, and then I also have been dying to play with War of the Ring with Mo too. So full disclosure, I keep going back and forth of whether I want to kill Gandalf or whether I want to try to experiment with Twilight Imperium. Ultimately, we made the decision that we really did want to explore a 2-player variant of this game. Yeah. Also, I will say, I was very skeptical going into the vanilla game, if you remember, and we had a blast.
We had an awesome time. So who's to say that this 2-player variant might not actually be? It might be fun. It might be a lot of fun.
I think it will be. It's still TI. It's still at its core a really fun game.
Yep.
I have no expectations going in. I think definitely the 2-playerness of it raises a lot of interesting decisions already, even before we start the game. One thing I was thinking about was what faction to pick, and I honestly right now don't know. Mostly because I don't know how the game is going to play. So
I expect it'll be Space Risk. I expect it'll be a life. If there's going to be 2 players vying for stuff. I expect we're going to be doing a lot of fighting, which is why I was planning on picking something that could do a lot of fighting. That was my... I don't know. I could be wrong.
No, I agree with you. Like, I don't think but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But and that's why I find it interesting, and that's why I'm really glad we're doing it. Something like Hakan, I don't know is very suited for a 2-player game.
There you go.
But then again...
So you know who not to play.
Well, but then again... somebody who is very overly space risky might not be good as well, depending on how the board plays out, depending on what strategies people deploy. So I think one thing I'm just curious to see is how much of it is actually space risk and how much of it involves other stuff.
The interesting thing about this, Chris, too, is that this has you basically each one of us will get 4 public objectives that we pick 2 from that then form the public objectives deck that we then shuffle and reveal in order. So essentially, right off the bat, and I don't know if it mentions whether we know them or not, but right off the bat,
well, I think let's go through. I think one thing we can do is kind of go through just a very high level overview of some of the changes.
Yep.
And again, you can look this up online, so we're not going to read it rule for rule.
Yeah.
And also keep in mind, this is going to be our first time playing it, so we are going to be going back and forth on the rules. But as you were saying, I think there's a big change initially to how the agendas are picked.
How the agendas are picked has obviously a big change. The other really interesting change is in regards to the strategy cards. Now, the strategy cards, obviously in a 4-player game, very interesting, you end up having each player pick 2 strategy cards, so that all
Right.
strategy cards are picked. You go to a 5-player game, you're going to have 3 strategy cards that are not going to get picked because each player can only pick 1. In this 2-player variant, the way this works is that of the 8 strategy cards, 2 of them are going to end up being unpicked.
Mm-hmm.
The other 6 essentially are split between the 3 players.
Right.
And they alternate selecting the available strategy cards until both players have taken 3 strategy cards. So it's going to be interesting to have 3 strategy cards.
Mm-hmm.
That's right there. That's one of the first major things I see as far as change in the gameplay.
Right. Which, yeah, we'll have super strategy cards. I will also add that they do make minor tweaks
To the strategy cards
rules
themselves,
to some of them.
Yeah.
One of the big ones being trade, and then politics. One of the other big changes is that the speaker token isn't determined by politics. It gets passed back and forth.
Yeah.
We'll see if that makes the politics card
And
completely useless.
trade, maybe it does. Well, the politics card. Well, so here's the thing. Yeah, I mean the player. That's it. Choose a player other than the speaker.
Right. So you still
That
get
player
action
gains a
cards
speaker
from
token.
it, but we'll see. We'll see.
So it's kind of weird. The other thing about the trade card is that all players automatically replenish their commodities. So you look at something like Hakan, it just doesn't make sense to play Hakan in a 2-player variant. So you see that there are some factions that just you wouldn't want to play in this variant. So that's kind of...
But we'll see. I mean, I could probably make a case for
maybe. I'd love to see if you can make a
in
case
some
for...
cases. I mean, maybe they could stand out. I've learned with TI, never say never. And whenever I go into a game and say this is how it should be, it completely does something different.
Yep.
And again, not to go into too much detail, but there are some I think more bigger changes to the agenda phase, kind of with voting, with how votes are counted. There's a blind voting system.
Yep.
So you write down your votes and then you both reveal it. So I think actually looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. And then finally, my favorite thing here, they have a catch-up rule, which is basically whoever's down gets trade goods equal to the number of point differential. So it should keep the game a little closer. We'll see how it actually works in practice.
Yeah.
But one of the things especially with the compensation, is I could see if you really did start to develop your 2-player game, you could really get into some strategies of when to get points and when to stay behind. So I'm hoping as we play it, we can kind of get some insight into the pros and the cons of it. Again, I do know going into this that Twilight Imperium is not built
it's not
for 2 players.
It was never designed to be done that way. And to be honest, I have no idea, no clue. Maybe Chris, you do, but I have no clue what to expect from this game.
Right.
I don't know if it's going to be fun. Like, we played other games where I'm like, vanilla. I'm like, well, I expect that, I'm going to like this. I'm not going to like that. With this, I really have no idea what the pace is going to be like. So I'm actually pretty interested. I'm excited to see, are we going to enjoy it? Like, within the first couple of rounds, are we going to say, hey, this feels like TI just with less people? Or is it just going to feel weird?
Yeah. So we're going to see. We're going to set up. It starts with a draft. So we're going to draft our solar system, pick our factions. Again, I'm going to actually have to think about what faction I want to play. And then...
No inklings on anything right off the bat?
I mean, I'm... No, not really. I mean, when in doubt, pick Soul.
That's
but
Chris's motto.
Yeah, I mean that kind of is my motto for most of the games. But we'll see once we start getting set up.
I think I'm gonna pick a vanilla faction just to keep it simple.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and we're playing this with POK rules.
I think we will.
Okay,
just because. In my mind, I figured it was
POK. Okay.
But that's a question that you can ask when you play. Do you want to add POK or not?
Yeah.
I don't think POK would really alter the 2-playerness
too much
of it, but we have a whole other debates about POK.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to coming away with some insight. If this ends up being good, we're excited to let everybody know, hey, this actually works and it's enjoyable. But I am looking forward to seeing what we come up with here. What do you think?
Yeah. So let's do it. We're gonna start, and we'll catch up with you guys in a little bit.
Awesome.
Thanks. Bye. back. We successfully played well, I don't know if successful is the right word, but we did end up playing.
We finished a
yes,
two-player game.
We finished in record time.
Yes.
A 2-player game
That moved very quickly.
And we just wanted to kind of touch base and share our thoughts on our 2-player game, our adventure.
Yeah.
We also, as an extra bonus and kind of testing the waters, a balancing act here, we played Eclipse last night as well.
Yep. As a 2-player game as well.
Yes, because that has been referred to as the Euro TI, which I will get into it, but I don't think that's true. But it was still fun, and I actually think there is a good point of comparison between the two games. But first, I think really we wanted to kind of just dive into our 2-player game and kind of share our thoughts on whether TI can be played with 2 players, the good and the bad, and kind of just get our general overview of the lay of the land in case anybody was curious. So
yeah,
to start off, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, excellent intro, Chris. So my initial thoughts, Chris and I got together to do this Princess Variant of TI, and as soon as we started, I felt the TI-ness, right? I was like, oh, we're playing Twilight Imperium. I love that. That, putting the pieces on the board and picking the races and doing all of that, it was great. It got me to, because I love Twilight Imperium. So it was great when we're playing this 2-player variant. Of course, there was some rule, stuff, clarification here and there that we needed to figure out. But I definitely got that initial rush of playing TI. So I was very happy in the beginning. But as the game progressed, the various things and rules that were there to take this game that was not meant to be 2 players and turn it into a 2-player game started to really take away from my experience in a way that made it not, and I'm going to give it away here, I'm not going to wait till the end of the episode to say, but in a way that made it not enjoyable for me. And I told Chris that. I mean, just off the bat, right. You remember just the agenda phase by itself was a nightmare. And I say a nightmare, it was just not fun. We were throwing out cards, we're like, that doesn't work. We were like, well, I guess we just, and then we, that the idea of the voting was kind of cool, but I know you like that, and the blind bet, the blind vote. But ultimately, the agenda phase, if you ask me, just needed to be scrapped entirely because it didn't make sense for 2 people to do an agenda phase.
Yeah.
So that kind of was my, there's deeper things I can talk about, but initially, my initial impression, my overall impression was that I love the TI-ness of it. I didn't like the 2-player variant version. It just wasn't there for me.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I'm less harsh on the 2-player game than Mo was. Stepping away, I'm going to have to admit there were a lot of for lack of hiccups. Yes, hiccups is the right word to it. And there were a lot of pieces missing or just didn't work. And again, I do have to caveat a lot of this by saying, we fully know that TI is not a 2-player game, and this reinforced it in a way, but it also highlighted some of the amazing things that TI brings as a game overall. Because the stuff that we didn't have, like, with 2-player, there's no support for the throne.
No support.
I mean, there could be. There could be.
I support your bid. Oh, well, I support yours as well. Well, there's a point off the table.
But, a lot of this isn't meant to be punching down on, none of this is punching down on a game that is amazing to play with 3+ people. So, the game wasn't built for it, so I think a lot of the criticism we're having is just basically saying, look, find some friends.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we only had to do this because of the pandemic. A lot of our friends that normally would have been playing TI, this Delta variant, and I'm sure a lot of people in the board gaming world, especially TI, are feeling it, has kind of gotten people to be worried, rightfully so. But it has certainly kind of made it more difficult to get together to play board games with a lot of friends. There are a ton of really great 2-player games out there. TI is, in my opinion anyway, not one of them. Now, when we did play Eclipse actually does have, as a game, it is 2 to 6 players. So you can play it as a 2-player game, whereas TI is not. Now, I think Chris enjoyed playing Eclipse. I love that game. I think it's great. But ultimately, it was also not that satisfying as a 2-player game for the reason I'm going to bring up about TI and about Eclipse as not being good 2-player games. What I like to call the galaxy problem. Right, the galaxy problem is that you have a galaxy, right? So Chris and I are here and here, and same in TI, same in Eclipse. To interact with each other, we have to traverse this galaxy.
Yes.
In TI, we literally had to sort of kind of get to Mechatol and then meet there. And by the time we did that, honestly, the game was pretty much over.
We had one fight. We had one fight
because we were scoring our points anyway. So it was basically, by the time we actually started interacting, the game was over. Same thing with Eclipse. Yeah. Eclipse had 8 rounds. By the 8th round, that's when we had one big fight, and the game was over because we had this galaxy to traverse. Now, the difference between Eclipse and TI is that in Eclipse, there are NPCs that you have to go and rough up.
Yeah.
So it makes the game fun in that you're fighting these NPCs, but we're not actually fighting each other or really dealing with each other.
There was no stakes in the NPC.
There were no.
In some ways, it was like, I want you to kill the
NPC. I want you to win so that you can, and so every time Chris would lose a fight, because I would roll for the NPC and he'd roll for the NPC against me, we call them the Guardians or the Ancients, and when he would lose, I'd be like, Chris, that sucks, even though he was my opponent.
Right.
And it was like, I wanted him to win, and that's an Eclipse. So 2-player Eclipse, the galaxy problem really does take away from it. Now, that being said, when we talk about Twilight Imperium, it's the similar problem.
Right. It's the same problem.
Except you don't have any NPCs that you have to fight.
Right. So I will say, this is where I come down, because I really did have fun in the early parts of our TI game. I enjoyed it, and I actually came away from the game going, I would give 2-player TI another shot. I really would. I think you could tweak a few things. I do agree, and we'll probably get to it separately. The agenda phase is not made for 2 players, but I really liked when it hit. I really liked the blind voting that we did. I thought it was a really cool mechanic.
It is. It is a cool mechanic, yeah.
And I guess I'll just go into it now. Yeah. The problem we had was a lot of the agendas weren't made for either the board we were playing, or they weren't suitable for 2 players.
For the 2-player.
Like, there were some with wormholes, and we didn't have any wormholes on them.
Yep. Like my suggestion for the Princess variant would be to also include what agendas to take out and to keep in, which wasn't there.
Yeah, I think, and again, we played one variant we found on the internet.
I think it's the really the only real accepted variant, right? I didn't see any other popular.
Right, but I think you could, if you really sat down, craft maybe a 2-player game out of TI. I still think you would run into a lot of the roadblocks we were having, but having agendas that were made for more than 2 people, or a board that wasn't really representative of an actual TI board, just ended up I think the first round we did it. I think we got lucky because a lot of them were was it Master of War or Minister of Science,
and maybe the deck wasn't shuffled because we got like 2 or 3 of those. So it was like, there was it actually really worked out very well, because the blind bid thing was like, well, how much are you really willing to throw on this thing? And at first, actually, this was very interesting, Chris. At first, Chris was like, well, the politics card is useless, until we realized that the politics card in the 2-player variant gives you the ability to see what the agendas are, which if you're blind bidding on agendas, you want to know what's coming up next. Because I could be like, if I took politics and I go, well, of the 3 agendas that we have to vote on, the second 2 suck, I can blind bid all of my votes on the initial agenda and more than double Chris's votes and just win it. Right. And then knowing that the others don't count. So politics actually became very important.
Yes. And then and I like those little kind of nuances that we sort of encountered that it did. There were some positive, I think, skews to the 2-player game. That being said, I think the plottiness of it, just to bring that back to it, we both started on opposite sides of the map. We had 4 rounds. We kind of marched our troops to the center of the game. We got to the center. We had 1 fight over Mechatol, and then the game was kind of done. And, again, I really did enjoy the first 2 rounds, because it still felt like the TI game of, I get to take systems. I get to explore. We get to do blind, we get to bid on stuff. you definitely, at least I felt there was a feel to, or there was still the TI feel to it. I will admit, again, I think I would try another 2-player game at some point.
Of TI?
Maybe. I mean, I know.
There's just so many better
problem
2-player games.
The problem we run into is we have limited
amount of time. Look, here's the thing: if you're gonna sit down and spend a couple hours with a game, you wanna really maximize that time. I don't have that much time, but I do love my board games, and I love getting together with Chris to play board games. And if I'm gonna get together with Chris and play board games where it's just him and I, there are so many better games that we can play besides TI. That makes more sense for 2 players. If TI is on the table, don't get me wrong, that box is coming right out. But if it's just 2 players, we were talking about there's just so many other better 2-player games, and even Eclipse, which can work for 2 players, didn't really scratch the itch for me. It left me unsatisfied.
Both of them, there is definitely an unsatisfactoriness to it. I not to shift too much here, but I did enjoy playing Eclipse last night.
It's a fun game.
It is a fun game. I liked building our ships and kind of sending them out. We still had the galaxy problem, which we encountered. I'll just throw it out there what I told Mo. I don't think it's TI. I think it's Scythe in space.
That's interesting. I haven't played Scythe, so now I'm really curious.
I really, really think it shares a lot of the same mechanics as Scythe. But that being said, it was fun. But they're games that definitely, there's a social aspect to them that gets turned up to 11 when you have other people you can play off of and against.
And Chris, I sleep and dream and think about this stuff. I was like trying to compile my thoughts about why TI just wasn't as fun 2 players. And I came up with a good analogy. For anybody, you, Chris included, any of our viewers, if you've ever seen the movie The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, there's a final scene in there, and I'm not going to give it away. You should really watch that movie. It's a classic.
If you haven't seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, stop
right now.
Go watch it.
Go watch it. Spoiler alert.
It's a classic.
But it's a classic. But the final scene, spoiler, coming up.
It's The Good,
the Bad, and the Ugly, and they all face off. In essentially a Western style sort of face off with guns, but the problem is that it's 3 people. So one guy shoots another guy, the third guy is going to be right there. So the scene is epic with the music and then the close-ups and the blah 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 on each of their faces, because each one of them is looking at this guy and going, who's doing what here? Because I need to watch out because I'm trying to be the one last man standing, and it really the 3-player TI is kind of like that, right? Minimum 3 players, you're gonna get that. With 2 players, it's just a 1v1, and whoever is shoots first and gets it, it's over. It's not as epic, right? You don't see a two cowboy standoff being as epic as that scene with the 3. And honestly, that to me was an apt analogy for why 2-player TI just didn't work. You don't get that. The theme, you don't get that diplomacy, you don't get that I gotta watch out for
you do have the westerns with the quick draw.
Yeah, but it's quick. It's quick and it's done. It's over. Right?
That is true. We finished our TI game,
and it was like Chris was like, I won, and he won. I think he won by like a
point or two. But it was like,
oh,
we started after 7:00, and by 9:00 we were done.
Right,
we were just done.
Is that TI? I mean, is that?
It's not.
It's not what you think of when you think of Twilight Imperium.
Right,
edition.
Right. I mean, I guess if you want a quick game, you can just. And that time included setup too.
It included setup.
We'll say we just kind of plodded along. I got my card. I do,
easiest game of TI. I mean, I didn't win, but it was the easiest game of TI I ever played, and it was real quick, and there was not a lot to it.
But I won, but that's just because there was one battle. I mean, it was basically we had one battle, and then I won the battle, and it was like, well, that was just the game.
That was it.
I took Mechatol, and
and that's what I meant. I mean, we had a good time. You know, it was like, well, good night, Chris, whatever, and then it was like, as I was going to sleep, I'm like. I didn't feel the drama,
No, there were no stakes. There were no stakes.
There were no stakes.
That's the other thing of playing with other people is you have more stakes going on. Yeah. You certainly have reputational stakes, but you also do have an interaction with people where I played a game on Sunday at the boardroom, and it was a really fun game, but it was just it was 4 of us. And
I couldn't be there.
which is fine.
Yeah.
Which is you're allowed to not to take a break to go do other.
I
things.
missed it. I wanted to be there.
But it was a fun game. But it was 4 of us, and I think all of us were very evenly matched. It was Volwraith, Sar, Titans, and Necro. So kind of a
power game.
A power 4 there. But it was one of those games where I think we respected each other's power.
Chris sent me a picture
Yeah.
via text as I was away, and it was like, things are heating up, and everybody had their ships in very close proximity, and I'm like, oh, that looks exciting.
It was just plastic. Everybody just put tons of plastic down. There was some fighting, but it was kind of nibbling around the edges. There were no...
Everybody respected everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh at one point...
So it was that standoff where everyone was like, anybody who makes a move here, the other one's going to capitalize.
Yeah, I mean, Josh was like, because he was Sar, and he's basically hit this huge Sar ball right next to Mechatol, and then Pem, who had Titans, took Mechatol, and, I was having this huge Volwraith, like, I'm just dropping down ships right, and basically anywhere I could put them.
Mm-hmm.
But it was one of those, we realized that if 2 of us got into a fight, we would lose so much plastic.
That one of the other 2 would
that
just
the other,
capitalize.
yeah, and Josh said it at some point.
TI.
Right.
Ding. Right. That's what makes TI fun.
Uh-huh.
You can't get that in 2 players.
Right.
You just, I mean, that right there is the point.
Right.
That drama
Mm-hmm.
is awesome. That's
Yes.
what makes TI so fun.
And there's the balance there, because I think with 2-player, as soon as you lose the battle, you're kind of done.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I killed all your ships here, and I have Mechatol, and by the time you either build more plastic, I'll build the same amount of plastic, and then we'll plot our ships back to the middle, and I guess we'll do it again, but the game's over by then.
This actually reminds me again of the review that Quinn's did with Shut Up and Sit Down, talking about TI, talking about how this very simple problem, so to speak, of like, well, this person, I want to attack and do this, becomes a much more complex diplomatic problem when you think about the other players.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes TI interesting and fun, because every move you make, it's not just staring down one opponent. The consequences are, this is what chess is. Chess is very much like, I make a move because I know that whatever move you make is going to be either responding to, but there's with TI, the diplomacy and the fact that you got to watch out for all the other players, because they might just see an easy way to capitalize on your fight with someone else. Mm-hmm. That's what makes TI so fun. Yeah, and that's what you don't get with 2-player TI.
Well, I'll go back to the game we had, the 6-player game we had where Hakan won. Mm-hmm. And
because everybody was fighting.
Daniel didn't do anything.
That's right.
He just sat there.
He did something.
Well,
what he did was he did not get into any fights.
He was like, you guys are dumb.
He played diplomatically well, and I saw it, so we keep going back to that game, because the diplomacy aspect of TI is honestly one of the things that makes it such an amazing game. And you hardly get any of that, if at all, with 2 players. I mean, honestly, the agenda phase with Chris and I in the 2-player variant really felt like we were just like, well, what do you want to do here?
Right. No, there were definitely points where it was like, well, I kind of really want that one, so I'll take it, and then you can have the next one. Yeah. And there was some haggling.
It was haggling, but it was very like one-on-one, and so it was literally we were trading stuff back and forth. But like, all right, you can have that one if I have this one.
You can be Minister of War. I'm going to be Minister of Science, and
You see why it took away from my enjoyment. I really think the agenda phase was just not enjoyable. And if you took out all the cards in the agenda phase that got those situations to that are not as fun, I think that maybe the 2-player variant might be a little bit better. There are certainly ways I think it can be improved. I just think that my gaming time is such that
I have so many games that we have to play.
Other 2-player games, War of the Ring.
Yes, we're gonna do that.
Twilight Struggle.
Yes.
And those are
Summoner
games.
Wars.
Summoner Wars we played recently. Phenomenal 2-player game. There's just a lot. I have if you want to play a war game, Memoir 44 is a great 2-player game. I know, Chris, you haven't played that yet. I know this is our lovely podcast about TI, but since we are talking about 2 players, those are all. If you only have 2 people, don't and you have the choice, don't bust out TI, bust out one of those games,
or at least give it a shot.
Try it. We have tried it for you, dear viewers, and it just didn't hit the mark for us.
Yeah, I think that's the good and the bad and the ugly
Analogy, yeah.
is that it was a little lackluster.
Mm-hmm.
Again, my final point being, it's a game that shines and is made for more than, two players.
Yeah.
But when it shines, it really hits.
Really
like
hits.
I can't tell you, even playing Eclipse, I will say there's little things, and again, I don't want this to be just dog on things that aren't TI, but the lore in TI really captures you.
Yep. And you don't get that lore with Eclipse, by the way.
Yeah.
So Eclipse is lacking in that fleshed out feel.
Right.
But Eclipse's fun is somewhere else, which is in it's all about like the Lego thing you play with customizing your ships is really cool. It's entirely tactical. Right? It's an entirely tactical game with a sprinkling of strategy. But it's so well done. The production on it is so well done that it's enjoyable to play. Whereas TI is this much more fleshed out mixture of tactics and strategy and diplomacy that I think is unmatched in other board games of its kind. Even Eclipse, but Eclipse I really do think is a different game, and I have to sort of see if there's credence to what Chris is saying about it being Scythe in space. I'd love to see how that is. I'm very interested. I've been wanting to play Scythe, and now I really feel like I need to.
Well, I think we'll do it in a few weeks.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, so I'm glad we did it. I really, really am. I'm glad we got to experience TI on a 2-player level.
Yeah.
And if anybody, has any other comments or has other experiences with 2-player, any ideas?
Please share.
Yeah, share them. You can post, I think, in the comments to this video.
Yep.
If we missed something, if there's ways to make it more exciting, we're definitely up for it. I again would try again as an experiment, but I also want to play War of the Rings. So we'll see where
it's all
goes.
about. Thank you, everyone. Please feel free to share your comments. Like Chris was saying, if you have suggestions for other episodes, themes, we're happy to take them as well. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, even share our YouTube channel with other people. We love making this stuff, and we want to make more for you guys. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.